Hello, and welcome to the first session of our Med Instead of Meds Walk Kansas lunch series. We are so glad you're joining us this afternoon and hope that you've been enjoying getting active with your Walk Kansas teammates. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that K-State Research and Extension is an equal opportunity employer. Therefore, we do not discriminate against anyone. So if there is a special request or concern that you need addressed to attend our programs, please reach out to us and let us know. Today, we are diving into the Med Instead of Meds program, and Christina Holmes, the Southeast Regional Family and Consumer Sciences Specialist, will introduce this eating plan to us, and Sherilyn Jackson, the Northeast Regional Family and Consumer Sciences Specialist and Walk Kansas State Leader, will explore some of the delicious recipes we encourage you to try this spring. I am Ashley Swati, the Northwest Family and Consumer Sciences Specialist, and I will be monitoring the chat and Q&A today. We encourage you to utilize both the Q&A and chat to engage with us and ask questions. We are here to learn together. And I'm personally really excited to learn about the new recipes I can bring for lunch in the future. So now let's dive in and see what this med way of eating is all about. Take it away, Christina.
Thank you, Ashley. As Ashley said, my name is Christina Holmes, and I'm excited to bring the introduction to the Medway educational opportunity for you today. Med Instead of Meds is a class series focused on the Mediterranean way of eating, which for many of us may mean a new way of eating. The title reflects what we can do to prevent or delay the onset of chronic diseases by changing our lifestyle, meaning our dietary intake and our physical activity level. In today's presentation, we're going to talk about what the Mediterranean way of eating looks like, what research says about the Mediterranean way of eating, and what we can do to start making those small changes in our lifestyle to eat the Mediterranean way. Before we get started today, I'd like for you to type in the chat something that you would like to learn throughout this class series. So let's get started. Two-thirds is the amount of chronic diseases that can be prevented by lifestyle changes alone. This is discussing dietary changes and physical activity. When we think about our lifestyle, we think about research. Research shows that by changing our diet and our physical activity, we can reduce the onset of chronic diseases. But when we look at data, we also know that chronic diseases continue to increase. We hope through the next 6 sessions, you're able to learn and get encouraged and motivated to start making some dietary changes in order for you to improve the health outcomes of yourself and your family members. But before we start making those dietary changes, we always have to think about the barriers that we may encounter to be healthy. What are the things, your stumbling blocks or the barriers that you're encountering? I often hear it's too hard. I can't make those changes because it's hard, it's confusing, and most likely it's too expensive. We're going to walk you through those barriers because we want this something to be sustainable and easy for you to implement in your life. When we talk to people, we often hear it doesn't taste good. If you're fixing a meal for your family and no one likes it, you're not likely to prepare it again. Often we hear it's too hard to stick with or I don't have enough time. I think we can all agree our lifestyles are busy and it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. And lastly, I don't have the culinary skills. I can't prepare those recipes. What I like about this series is that it guides us through the next 6 weeks of making gradual changes. And the recipes are for a variety of skill levels. I have a 10-year-old at home, so she's the one that keeps my schedule so busy, but she also likes to cook, and she's prepared several of these recipes, and they're amazing. So don't let these changes overwhelm you. We hope to guide you through this process so it's easy, sustainable, and realistic for you and your lifestyle. So is it difficult? Let's review some of the items or foods that we'll be consuming in the Mediterranean way of eating. What does this look like? It's eating more of these foods, and these, and a lot more of these, more beans and legumes, more fish and seafood, and ultimately more of these items. We look at the pictures on the screen, it's items that are nearest the natural state as possible, which means it's not a lot of effort that you have to do in preparing those items. We're going to talk today about how are some basic things we can do to incorporate these in our lives so it's not going to be a burden for you and you're going to feel better. So the Med Instead of Meds dietary approach, or you can think about it as pans versus pills. Research shows that the Mediterranean style of eating is highly effective in preventing and controlling chronic disease. So you can think about this in one or two ways. In the future, you could use medications to control a chronic illness, or maybe we can make dietary changes now so we can reduce the likelihood of developing chronic illnesses or control the ones that you maybe already have. So let's talk about what we can do different to improve our health. What is the Mediterranean way of eating? As I prepared for this introduction today, I think about our baseline. Think about what you've done in the last week. Often when we think about dietary changes, it gets overwhelming. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this differently and this differently. I want you to think about your intake and your physical activity level over the last week as your baseline. What small changes can we make this week to be healthier? So what does the Mediterranean way of eating look like? The first part and the main focus of this eating method is fruits and vegetables. Looking at this picture, there's a variety of colors, and that's really important to think about as you meal plan or grocery shop or pack your lunch, as Ashley was talking about earlier. We want fruits and vegetables in our diet to be a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. That's going to incorporate more vitamins and minerals in our diet. Again, we're going to talk about preparation methods and recipes to make this easier for you. The next piece is whole grains. Making most, if not all, of the whole grains in our diet, whole grains is really important. Whole grains increase a lot of fiber in our diet, which has been shown to help improve blood sugar levels, cholesterol levels, but it also fills you up faster at a meal. If you get full faster, you'll eat less, which can help with that weight loss. The next piece is beans and legumes. Beans and legumes are also a great source of fiber. They add protein and they're a source of antioxidants. When we talk about our risk factor for developing chronic diseases, antioxidants are really important, and we find those in our superfoods, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We also want to increase our seafood or our fish intake to at least twice a week. Again, thinking about meal planning and grocery shopping, what are some seafood or fish or shrimp options that we can add into our weekly eating to help meet that recommendation? Nuts and seeds are a great source of unsaturated fats. They're a high source of fat, but it's the good fat that's good for our heart. So thinking about this, you can incorporate into a snack or maybe on a salad, but try to keep your daily intake at the size of a handful or less to help control your overall calorie intake from your nuts and seeds. And then evaluating our fat intake. Fat usually gets a bad reputation, but we need fats in our diet, but we want to focus on the fats we do consume being a good source of mono and polyunsaturated fat. Research indicates that's better for our heart health. And so trying to get olive oil in our diet versus maybe butter when we're preparing or cooking a meal. Next are herbs and spices. This is a big component in regards to changing our dietary intake. When you change the foods you eat, the most often what we miss is the flavor. Herbs and spices can increase the flavor, helping you enjoy your meals, which is very important. Another benefit of herbs and spices, it'll give you the opportunity to reduce your sodium intake. Salt can have an impact on your blood pressure levels, which would then increase your risk for cardiovascular disease. So incorporating herbs and spices is really important to improve the flavor profile of your foods while also helping you reduce your salt intake. The last piece of nutritional recommendation is red wine in moderation. This piece is optional, but you can do so in moderation with with your dietary intake. What I like about the Mediterranean way of eating, it goes beyond just your dietary recommendations. It incorporates the importance of regular physical activity. Again, think about where you've been at in the last week or last 2 weeks. Ideally, your physical activity level is increasing as a result of Walk Kansas. So we want to keep that up and keep increasing. Try to get 30 minutes a day of vigorous exercise most, if not all days of the week. In addition to that, this is something we don't often talk about with dietary recommendations, but it's taking the time to enjoy your meal. And this makes perfect sense. If you're having a conversation over lunch or at dinner, likely you're sitting your fork down between bites, you're taking the time to chew your food, and as a result, it's giving your body time to realize that you're getting full. If you sit by yourself and eat a meal real fast so you can get back to work, likely your portion sizes are going to be higher than what you anticipate or think about, and you haven't even enjoyed your meal. We want to take time to savor the foods we're preparing, so it's going to make it worth the effort of cooking the foods, but also it's giving you an opportunity to connect with your family members. It's helping your mental health as well. The last piece is your sweetened beverage intake or your overall sugar intake. Evaluate the past week. What intake have you had from sugar? Is it pop, Is it sweet tea? Maybe it's sugar sweetened beverage, sugar sweetened coffee drinks, or it's cakes, cookies, pies, and pastries, and those kind of things. Think about your baseline and what gradual changes we can make in order to help reduce the sugar intake in your daily diet. Before you make any kind of dietary changes, and I know there's lots of recommendations and things that you may see on social media or online, always compare those recommendations to what the standards have been in the past regarding dietary intake, or in comparison to those superfoods that we know are packed full of antioxidants to improve our health and our health outcomes. So looking at this slide, this aligns the recommendations that we just talked about with some of the standards of dietary intake. The Mediterranean way of eating has a focus on fruits and vegetables, packing the vitamins and minerals that your body needs. Mediterranean way of eating incorporates nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, which are a good source of fiber in your diet, whole grains, which are a good source of protein, and those heart healthy fats. In addition, it encourages the recommendation of adding seafood or fish twice a week. All those boxes are checked in regards to the recommendations of the Mediterranean way of eating, aligning with the superfoods in our diet. But what's discouraged? What are some items we need to gradually reduce? Thinking about our sugar intake, thinking about how much you're currently consuming and gradually reducing. The Mediterranean way of eating recommends limiting our sugar intake. It also recommends reducing our processed meat intake. Processed meats can be connected with some risk factors for cancer. So we want to monitor our portion sizes and making sure we're getting a variety of our protein, which helps by increasing that fish and seafood intake. We want to reduce our butter intake and also having to focus on how much processed foods we're consuming. We're really making an effort to try to increase foods that are minimally refined or processed. It's going to increase your vitamin and mineral content of your diet and also your overall dietary fiber intake. But I don't want anybody to get confused regarding Mediterranean diet and our flavor profile. We need variety in our diet. We need different flavors, and that's not what this diet's recommending, just to limit ourselves to one flavor profile. The Mediterranean way of eating is a focus on the traditional eating patterns of the countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. It's important to note that it's not necessarily the current dietary intake of those countries surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. It's the prior traditional intake. You can incorporate these dietary recommendations with Indian, Italian, Mexican cuisine. It doesn't have to be that standard Mediterranean flavor profile that we think about. So now we think about the standard or the typical Italian or Greek cuisine, and now we can already see that this doesn't necessarily always align with the Mediterranean way of eating. If some of those items you look at that claim to be Mediterranean are high in white flour, heavy on the portion sizes of proteins and lots of cheeses, we're going to know it's not the traditional Mediterranean way of eating. And these are things we want to do so in moderation or gradually reduce our intake. Another thing the Mediterranean way of eating is not is taking one key ingredient or component, which is often olive oil, and adding that to something that's highly processed or refined to make that a healthy food. And while these things in moderation may be okay, these are not items that are aligning with the Mediterranean way of eating. We want to make sure we're eating the balanced way and getting those foods in that are minimally processed or refined. What the Mediterranean way of eating is eating and preparing foods that's been minimally processed or altered. So, slightly sauteed vegetables, maybe grilled salmon, a fruit salad, those kind of things. And we think about our preparation time. It really won't take a lot of time to prepare those foods, which is going to help you reduce your stress and the time in the kitchen. Another thing the Mediterranean way of eating is again, using that one key ingredient as a magical ingredient. There's not one food or food group that's the magic cure-all. What is magic and what is important is that combination of all those foods and food groups. Some will pack in the vitamins and minerals. Others are going to be a great source of protein and antioxidants. Some are going to have that heart healthy fat. Combining all those things on a regular intake in your diet. So it's going to be very important in helping address your chronic disease risk or controlling the diseases that you currently have. I'm a visual learner, and so sometimes you can tell me that I need to eat so many servings of this or that a day, and sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my head around unless I can see a picture. So these are two graphics that I think are important to visualize. What I would really focus on today is the lower half of this pyramid. If we focus on these things, it's going to naturally help us reduce some of the items that are maybe more processed or not as healthy for us on a regular basis. I like that the base of this pyramid focuses on physical activity and enjoying meals with others. I feel like that's something that we've often lost. We eat meals on the go, meals in the car, through a fast food restaurant, or maybe on the couch. Take time to sit at the table with your families and enjoy your meal. Take time to put your fork down between bites and chew your food thoroughly. We want to enjoy and savor the flavors that we're going to be preparing. Also, we want you to be physically active. We think about dietary intake, physical activity always takes a back seat. This is a combination of all of these things combined to help improve your health outcomes. The next level of this pyramid is the largest area, and you'll see that's the dietary recommendations we just talked about. Base every meal on these foods: fruits, vegetables, grains, olive oil, nuts, seeds, beads, and legumes, herbs, and spices. When you go to the store, gradually start buying more of these items to incorporate in your meals and your snacks to help you align with this way of eating. The next level is your seafood and fish. If you're incorporating this into your lifestyle at least a couple times a week, it's going to help reduce the frequency and the amounts of the other foods on the higher end of this pyramid that we would typically consume. In addition to this, I want you to make sure you're drinking enough water. Water is really important. Sometimes your body signals to you that you're dehydrated and your brain interprets it that you're hungry. So that can be a problem because then you're going to be snacking, but in reality, you just need a drink of water. This graphic is probably my favorite because it's the most realistic way you can implement these changes in your meals. Look at this graphic in regards to your plate. This is kind of a play on the USDA My Plate. Half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. A variety of colors, shapes, and sizes is important to give you different antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. Thinking about preparation method and what you're adding to these things is also important. I can have the healthiest plate of broccoli in the world. If I'm adding all kinds of sauces and cheeses to that, it's then kind of reduced, the health benefit of that item, okay? In addition to that, look at the other half of your plate, whole grains. That's going to pack your nutrients and your fiber into your meals. So thinking about portion size, and whenever you do consume grains, making those items whole grain when you can. Next is your healthy protein. We're going to gradually start working on reducing our portion sizes or meal at our protein. What's going to help with that is by making half your plate fruits and vegetables. They're packed full of fiber, so you'll still feel satisfied at the end of the meal. In addition to this, the traditional My Plate, they've added the healthy oils on this graphic, and I think that's important. Fats have always had a bad reputation, but there's some fats that are unsaturated fat that are good for your heart, and fat helps promote satiety at a meal, which means you're going to stay full and satisfied. If you're not full and satisfied after a meal, again, you're likely to be snacking on things that maybe we shouldn't have. So again, it's the combination of all these food groups to ensure that we're healthy and we're full and our health's going to improve. So in addition to thinking about what we need to do, I think it's important to look at what the research indicates regarding the Mediterranean diet. So when compared to the traditional DASH diet that you may have heard of regarding improving blood pressure, the DASH diet, both versions, were lower in fat content recommendations than the Mediterranean diet. When we look at the dietary guidelines, the last two versions of the dietary guidelines have recommended and highlighted the impact of the Mediterranean style of eating on the reduction of chronic illness. So research is showing that this way of eating helps improve our health by choosing different food groups and different quantities of foods consumed. Why should we go med? So this is a couple of versions, and I want you to type in the chat, what are you concerned about with your future health that you would like to address now? I think about my family history. My grandpa recently passed away and he had diabetes and heart disease. Was there things that he could have done in regards to his dietary intake to improve his quality of life? And I also think about my family history and my risk factors that I'm passing on to my child. What health factors can we change now to improve our future health? So if you feel comfortable, feel free to put that in the chat. There's absolutely no pressure. But the image on this slide is the roasted vegetables. This is something that's easy to prepare. It's putting them in the oven with a little olive oil and the herbs and spices of your choice. It's an easy addition onto a quick evening meal. So if you have to run to a baseball practice or a tournament of some sort, a track meet, this is something you can easily have on hand, which is really important. But let's talk about the Mediterranean diet in regards to how it can benefit your future health and your health outcomes. So I think it's important to think about our cancer risk in regards to Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet has showed a decrease in colon cancer, breast cancer, and cardiovascular disease And so focusing on our cancer risk, if that's a risk factor for you, it's something that's very important. Making these small changes to reduce your cancer risk is very important. In addition, it's better for weight loss than a low-fat diet. So you think about in the past, there's so much talk and pressure regarding reducing our fat intake or going fat-free. But what was not really disclosed or talked about at the time is when we chose those fat-free items, they took out all the fat, but they often added sugar and starches back into those items. So you could have sugar-free or fat-free snack cakes all day long, but at the end of the day, you're still eating a snack cake. And often it's higher in carbohydrates than what that original item may have been. So the Mediterranean diet is showing the importance of fat in our diet, but a focus on those heart-healthy fats that we need. So again, balance and moderation, but we really have to work on changing our viewpoint on what foods we need to have and the portion sizes that we need to have to be healthy. It's also better for weight loss. So research has indicated that if someone that's overweight or obese may be more successful in the Mediterranean way of eating. And I think this makes sense in regards to the fiber intake, the adequate amount of protein, and those heart healthy fats. So someone's going to stay full after a meal because of the fiber and because of the overall fat intake. But also indicated that having this higher fat content did not cause weight gain, which is important. Someone's going to make a modification on their dietary intake to reduce chronic illness. We don't want to gain weight in the process. And research has shown that that's not the case with this dietary approach. But even through research and promotion of the benefits of these heart healthy fats, 9 out of 10 people are still worried at the end of the day about our fat intake. And I think we need to focus more on the quality of fat and the type of fat rather than reducing all fats out of our diet. Those the mono and polyunsaturated fats are really important for our heart health. And we'll learn in a minute about how it can reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. So we need to abandon that notion. We need to focus on the foods that we do need that are going to pack in the antioxidants and the different components in our diet that's going to help improve our blood pressure, our blood sugar, and our cardiovascular risk factors. This was something that was very important to me as well. Research has indicated that the Mediterranean diet can protect the small vessels in your brain and even the small vessels behind your eyes. And so it can have a benefit on your brain health. It can be a 40% decrease in your risk factors of developing Alzheimer's when you go on a Mediterranean diet. And also, as I talked about, those small vessels behind your eye can reduce your risk of macular degeneration. The Mediterranean way of diet decreases your risk factors for type 2 diabetes. One research indicated that you have a 52% reduction in your risk of developing diabetes by following the Mediterranean diet. That's a huge decrease. In addition, it also helps people monitor and control their diabetes better. And this makes sense. We're eating more fruits and vegetables. The whole grains are going to help delay the absorption of the carbohydrates in your diet. Eating balance is going to help you lose weight, which helps your blood sugar control. And that regular physical activity can improve your blood sugar control for up to 72 hours afterwards. So whether you're at risk for diabetes and you want to delay the onset or even prevent it, hopefully, or if you have diabetes and you're interested in getting better blood sugar control, the Mediterranean way of diet shows benefits on both of those perspectives. In addition, the Mediterranean way of diet helps people manage their blood pressure. And I think this has a connection back to the reducing our salt intake. You're using herbs and spices in your cooking. You're going to use salt less likely when you're cooking, hopefully. If you reduce your salt intake, it can have an impact on your blood pressure. Some people are what we call salt sensitive. So your salt intake can increase or have an impact on your blood pressure level. We also know that blood pressure is a risk factor, high blood pressure is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. So if you can have better control of your blood pressure, hopefully you have a better overall heart health for now and in the future. In addition, the Mediterranean way of eating has a reduction of your cardiovascular disease as much as 30 to 60%. Can you imagine reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease by up to 60%, reducing your diabetes risk factors for up to 52%? It shows the benefit of making these dietary changes. So the full adoption of a modern version of Mediterranean eating pattern can be considered one of the most effective approaches for the prevention of fatal and non-fatal cardiovascular disease complications. So this goes back to that original discussion, meds versus meds. Do we want to use our physical activity and our dietary changes to control our health outcome? Or do we want to use medications to control the likelihood of developing or controlling a chronic illness? I do want to note, this doesn't mean that you should stop taking a medication or take yourself off a medication without the doctor's permission. Sometimes medications are needed to control chronic illness. So this educational series hopefully will help you make changes now so you're not developing chronic diseases in the future. So research also indicates the importance of fruits and vegetables. So this supports the components of half your plate fruits and vegetables. Consuming 9 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day can reduce your cardiovascular disease risk by 60%. So again, let's talk about the key components of eating the Mediterranean way. This series goes for 6 sessions. So each time we meet, we're going to talk about another key component. Today's an introduction just to kind of help you wrap your brain around what we'll be doing differently and help you start planning and thinking about what you can change in your own life. Let's review those things one more time. Eating the Mediterranean way, focus on fruits and vegetables. Draw an imaginary line down your plate whenever you're preparing a meal. What can we put on that half of your plate to increase fruit and vegetable intake? Think about the rainbow. And I'm not talking about Skittles. I'm talking about fruits and vegetables and trying to get a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. So that's why it's promoting variety in your diet. Again, there's not one magical ingredient and one magical food that's going to improve your health. Next is our whole grains. Make most, if not all of your grains, whole grains. And again, it's trying a new item. Maybe you're trying to put oatmeal for breakfast or get whole grain toast, or maybe it's brown rice. Try to find some new things that you and your family enjoy and incorporate that in your regular dietary intake. Beans and legumes. You can add these to a salad, a soup, perhaps in a wrap. Again, it's going to increase our protein and our fiber intake and give you added antioxidants into your diet. Brainstorm how we can have more seafood and fish in our diet. Maybe we can grill it. Maybe we can saute it in the kitchen. Let's investigate some new recipes that we can try this week. Nuts and seeds. This could be an easy way to throw in a salad for packing your lunch. Ashley was asking for recipe suggestions. So you can easily add some nuts and seeds on our salad to get some of those extra added fats in our diet. Focusing on olive oil and other mono and polyunsaturated fats in our cooking and meal preparation. Trying to reduce the amount of butter that we're using this next week and see if we can add more olive oil to add some of those healthy fats in our diet. And our herbs and spices. Let's get creative. Let's look at recipes. Let's figure out what we can get and how we can utilize it. If you're buying fresh herbs and spices, it can get expensive. So if you're buying something, try to use in a variety of recipes throughout the week. But it's also the season that we can start growing some of these things. So maybe getting a planter box for your kitchen window and grow some of your herbs and spices. That way you can incorporate those in meals throughout the day, every day. And next is our red wine, in moderation if you choose to add that in your daily routine. We've talked about physical activity, and I know you all are exercising more because of Walk Kansas, but make sure we keep that as a focus point on every day, making sure we're exercising or increasing our activity level. Enjoying our meal, taking time to put your fork down between bites, and interacting with those that we love or those that we eat our meals with. And also being very focused on what sweetened beverages we're consuming or other sweets throughout the day. Sometimes it's things that sneak in on our diet that we don't even realize it. Maybe it's that sweetened coffee drink that you have before in the mornings. What can we do to modify that to make it a little healthier? Maybe it's the jar of candy that your coworker has on their desk that you find, that's in your mouth every time you walk past their desk. So think about the small changes we can make this week to reduce the sugar intake in our diet and hopefully help start making better choices. I don't want this educational series to be something that's overwhelming or a burden. I think we all know at the end of the day, if something is a burden for us, it's going to be harder to stick with. I want the takeaway from today to be that this educational program and incorporating these recommendations in our lifestyle can be simple, delicious, and satisfying. So if you have kids at home, engaging them in some of these changes, letting them pick out fruits and vegetables. If they pick it out of the store, they're more likely to want to try it. We talked about the recipes. If you have an easy recipe that Sherilyn will discuss, engage your family members in helping prepare that recipe. They're going to be more likely to try it if they have have taken a part in that preparation method. Keep things simple, keep things delicious, and this will be something that can easily be implemented in your lifestyle. So each week, we're going to talk about different components of this diet. There's 7 steps to eat the Mediterranean way. We're going to have a different focus each week. Next week, when you join, we're going to talk about changing our protein. I know for me, I've had the same dietary routine my entire life. And so sometimes changes are hard. We're going to make those small changes each week to help you change your behaviors and your habits to help reduce your risk of developing chronic illness. In this session, we'll also talk each week about some flips that you can make. We all have recipes that your family loves and enjoys, and you incorporate, on a regular basis into your meal planning. What are some small flips we can make to make those things, foods that your family still enjoy, that are a lot healthier for you? So it may be a preparation method. It may be switching out an ingredient. It may not have to be a big change in order to have a big impact on the health benefits it has for your family. We're also going to talk about tips. We don't want to lead you astray and just lead you down this path on your own. We're going to give you tips to make sure this change can be easy for you to implement. So maybe it's a small thing about grocery shopping or meal prepping, or making that grocery list. Small things and tips that you can take away each week to make this more realistic. And lastly, and this is my favorite, is life hacks. My daughter's 10. She is always teaching me life hacks, which can be a little bit overwhelming because sometimes I'm pretty sure my approach is always better than her life hacks she's come up with. But we want to find life hacks that make this easier for you. I look at this picture and I saw someone prepping lunches for the week. So Ashley was talking about her lunch preparation. Maybe this is grilling chicken or a salad or a wrap that someone can have on a regular basis. If mealtime is overwhelming and it's going to take too much time, you're less likely to stick with it. We're going to learn those hacks over the next 6 weeks to make this more realistic. And lastly is mindfulness. You think about mindfulness and relaxation. We're going to focus on mindfulness and eating the Mediterranean way. I want you to focus this next week on putting your fork down between bites, taking time to savor the flavor and the textures of your food. There's nothing better than fresh produce. We're getting in that time of season where there's going to be more farmers markets open, or you may be growing your own produce. Take advantage of that hard work you've put into getting that or growing that item and savor the flavor. Interact with those that are around you. But we will really want to make meals something that's not rushed or chaotic. It's something that you enjoy and you look forward to. And so that's a focus I really want you to take away from this week and report back next week on what you've done to make your meals and your eating more mindful. Throughout this series, you can utilize, or even in the future, you can utilize the website below, medinsteadofmeds.com. There's great recipes on here. There's some videos. There's some kind of fact sheets that you can look at. The bottom picture for it says dessert is the banana granita, and my daughter loves preparing that. Get on, find your recipe, print it off, see if you can fix it this week, and let us know next week on what your family thinks about it. So next, I'm going to transition over to Sherilyn. She's going to highlight some of the recipes that we're going to discuss this week. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for getting us off to a great start today and lots of wonderful information. I just want to highlight again that website because all of the recipes that we talk about are on that website. I'm also going to put the recipes as well as handouts in the WOC Kansas portal. So you look under resources on your purple tab at the top, click on resources, look for the Med Instead of Meds folder, and I'll be adding these each week that we have a new topic. And so this afternoon, I'll load the handout and the recipes that we've talked about today. I want to start with talking about green beans with lemon zest. And so green beans are a very common vegetable that we serve here in the US, but a lot of times we add a lot of salt to them to make them more palatable to our taste, but this one uses the lemon juice and lemon zest, which actually kind of tingles your tongue, so you may not need that extra salt at all or a much smaller amount. Keep in mind that acids such as lemon juice and zest, balsamic vinegar enhance the salty taste in recipes, so you can feel, again, that tingle on your tongue. Acidic flavors that work well in the kitchen include citrus juices like lemons and limes, tangerines, orange juice, also red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and rice wine vinegar. Adding these things to recipes can help you avoid needing that salt shaker quite as much. Next recipe, please, Christina. And the next one is a sauteed squash and onions recipe. This is a recipe that uses zucchini and yellow squash, but you can certainly just use one variety only. It's a traditional favorite in the South, but it's usually made with bacon grease. So prepared the Med way, the bacon grease is replaced with olive oil. So this is something that you can make ahead of time and just heat up what you need in a saute pan. So next slide, please. Oven roasted vegetables. This is one of my favorites. We talked a little bit about those earlier. With warmer weather coming, I also like to put these vegetables on the grill, and they're really, really tasty that way. So you can choose seasonal vegetables, which is what we recommend, just eating within the seasons. Also, you can find different kinds of combinations of vegetables that go well together on the website, Med Instead of Meds, and in this particular recipe gives some ideas. You can chop these veggies ahead of time so that they're ready to go, and all you need to do is put them in your put them on the sheet pan to put them in the oven or to take them out to the grill. I really like just using simple lemon pepper as a seasoning for these, although I also like putting sometimes a blend of Greek seasonings on them to give a little flavor boost. Next slide. This is the curry quinoa salad recipe. It's a great side dish, or it can be a main dish if you add a large vegetable salad with it as well. We had some information about quinoa in the first WOC Kansas newsletter. If you're not familiar with quinoa, we talk about it as a grain. We eat it as a grain, but it's actually a seed. And so I noticed that somebody mentioned not being able to have grains. So maybe this would be an option, something to check into. Actually, quinoa is an ancient seed or grain that's been essentially rediscovered. It is, as we think of it, a whole grain and has the highest protein content of all of the whole grains. Provides all 9 essential amino acids. It's gluten-free, cholesterol-free, and with this nutrient profile that it provides, it's sometimes called the mother grain. It's another big plus for quinoa. It can be ready in just 15 minutes, so it's very easy to prepare. The next recipe, please. And this is a mushroom almond burger recipe, and it's essentially a veggie burger that has a great flavor, and the small amount of the sharp cheese in this recipe and the umami from the mushrooms gives them a really great flavor. Umami means savoriness, and it's we taste this through taste receptors, and the foods that have strong umami flavor include our meats and shellfish, also fish, including fish sauce, tomatoes, mushrooms, cheeses, and soy sauce. And so there's a great flavor to this veggie burger. When you form the patties on this recipe, you'll want to use your hands and put them directly in a hot pan because they're hard to move around prior to cooking. But once they start to cook, the egg white helps them firm up and they can be turned easily. They can be served hot or room temperature or even cold. And let's move on to the fruit chat. This is an Indian style, kind of a sweet and savory dish or snack, and it's super easy to prepare. You can vary the few fruits to your liking and choose what's readily available. This recipe also includes a little bit of sweet potato, which is unusual, and some limes from the juice again from the limes is going to give you that tingliness on your tongue, and a tiny bit of salt, pepper, and even chili powder. So some really interesting flavors in this fruit chat that you might want to try. I have tasted this recipe a number of times, and it's really good, very interesting. And the next one, the banana oatmeal pancake. This is a delicious and a nutritious alternative to traditional pancakes, and it's a great way to use those bananas whose peels have started to brown. The riper the banana, the easier they are to mash and the more flavor they're going to give these pancakes. So you can top them with peanut butter or chopped nuts, and of course, some fruit, particularly berries, are really great on these pancakes. So I hope that you'll try some of these recipes and tell us what you think about them next week. We thank you again for joining us today for an introduction to the Medway. We want you to take a few seconds to complete the Med Instead of Meds survey. You can scan the QR code or you can go to the link that's there. We'll also have this in that same spot on the website in the portal. Again, these will all be there, and we hope you can join us for our next session, which is next Wednesday. We're going to talk about changing your protein. How about some questions, Ashley?
Well, we did have a lot in the chat and I was trying to go up through them, but if you have any, please put those in the Q&A so that they are right down there where I can get to them easily. I was trying to answer some of them as they came through about unsweetened tea. That's fine to drink, just in making sure that water is that main source of fluid that we drink.
I see in the chat nope, go ahead, Sherilyn.
I see the Cottonwood District is tasting the fruit chat as they are watching today. What do you guys think of that? You can put in chat if that's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Great, very flavorful, Stacy says. Wonderful.
And we had another question about the serving size for a side salad. I just kind of recommended, I went back to the plate method. If your side salad is filling up at least half of your plate, because we want to shoot for half of your plate with fruits and veggies, you're good to go. The more fruits and veggies in this plan, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't split hairs with portion sizes of fruits and vegetables. That one slide talked about getting at least 9 servings a day and the risk factor reduction for cardiovascular disease. So eat your salad, no worries there.
I know it's confusing too, because in my plate, they talk about cups. They measure things in cups. Well, cups is not necessarily the same as servings. And so, yeah, just getting more in that you can is recommended. So that 9 servings is probably about the same as the 5 cups of recommendation in the my plate.
Oh, Sherilyn, you might know this one. We did get a question about wine. If sweet red wine counted, or if it just needs to be the drier wine.
Ashley, why would you think I'd know that?
Because you know this curriculum so much better than us.
Actually, the red wine it's fine, either the savory or the savory, either the dry or the sweet red wines are preferred, just for the polyphenols that are present in the red wines.
See, you knew. That's why I tossed it off to you.
Someone asked about the white cheese in the Mediterranean salads. It could be feta. I'm not sure which recipe you're referring to, but most likely it's a feta cheese. It's very flavorful, so you don't have to add a lot to it, which is another benefit.
Someone asked about dairy as well in the Mediterranean diet, and I think Ashley answered that also. But I just want to also mention that choosing the low-fat, non-fat dairy options when you're, and it's some of this is just also what's readily available in the Mediterranean, countries. So I don't know, Christina, do you want to jump in on any more on that?
Yeah, it can be a little confusing, because earlier we said, don't worry about the no fat, non-fat, and now we're saying for the dairy. So we think about, when you look at a label, things that are a good source of mono and polyunsaturated fats are those fats that we need. Typically our dairy items that are full fat are more of a source of saturated fat. And so that would be the benefit of choosing a lower fat option. But when we think about like olive oil and those kind of things, using those items and not being afraid to incorporate those in our diet, because they can have that heart health benefit. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, so someone is asking just about some strategies to increase fruits and vegetables, and we will definitely talk about that as it goes along. One recommendation that I would have is if you're starting a small step this week is you take your kids to the grocery store, let them pick out a fruit or vegetable. Often when we do cooking classes, it's just amazing that kids, when they'll be willing to try something when they've helped prepare it or they've had a say in the selection. And so maybe have them pick out something or have them look through the recipes and say, hey, we're going to try something this week. What would you be willing to try? Kids are more likely when they have a say in it. So hopefully that helps. Sherilyn also said, talked about preparing your things ahead of time. So chopping up those fruits and vegetables and having them accessible in the refrigerator. Your kid opens the refrigerator after school and there's maybe a container of grapes in there that have already been washed, or some strawberries that have maybe been cut up. They may incorporate that as a snack when traditionally they may go grab something else that's been processed just because of the convenience. So making these foods that we want accessible and ready to grab and go will help you as an adult be more likely to consume them, because I'm going to grab those fruits and vegetables if they're ready to go to take them for my lunch, versus in the morning. We all know I'm not going to have time to do that in the morning. And so things that are accessible and available, I think you'll both be more likely to consume.
One of the other things that we've heard from Walk Kansas participants in previous years is, we have you track your fruit and vegetable consumption. So writing it down is a great way to know whether you're getting enough fruits and vegetables. But they've also told us, if I don't start eating fruits or vegetables in the morning with breakfast, then I can't get that amount in throughout the day. So try to build fruits and vegetables into every meal that you have, or go for that as a snack, and that'll help to incorporate more of those into your diet.
Yeah, and there was a suggestion about putting fruit out while you're preparing dinner if you're hungry. Yeah, I even saw a suggestion the other day about just slicing an apple and put it on the counter while you're preparing your meals, because your kids will come through and they'll grab that slice, and so will your spouse or whoever else. And so we're plugging a little extra fruit in there instead of grabbing something else that's maybe processed or higher calories to snack on before a meal. That's a great idea, JC. And even maybe slicing a pepper and having that out as an option as well. Great.
We did get a question on in-season produce, and I just answered that with a link that is on our Walk Kansas website.
Okay.
And there's
All right.
another question about, is it ill-advised to substitute bottled lemon juice for fresh squeezed for cost and ease? There's no problem with that. I think the taste is maybe a little bit different. And so I just keep plenty of lemons on hand all the time. And if you have lemons there and you're not using them up as fast as you feel like you should, just toss them in your water bottle and add lemons to that. But it's up to you. It shouldn't be a problem though for substituting bottled lemon juice for fresh squeezed.
Okay, I must any more.
If there are other questions that you have, you do have our information here on how to find us. So we just encourage you to send us an email. We'll be glad to answer any of those questions that you might have. Also, please do check with your local extension office. Your local agents are a fabulous resource for you. If you haven't gotten to know them yet, I encourage you to get to know them and develop that relationship to be able to ask some questions and get some other programs and support.
Well, thank you all for joining today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. If you have questions, write them down and we can answer them next week as well.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.